And that brings us to sort of the mentality. And we will talk about Conor's mentality. We'll talk about this ice-cold, undefeated Russian, Dagestani killer's mentality. We'll talk about all that. But I'm also interested in our mentality. So what is it to have your imagination captured in this way by this man or these men? And that's a very good question. 20 million of those people who would not identify themselves as a fight fan, but do watch fights a couple of times a year, for some reason this fight means something to them. That is our personal reaction to one or more of these individuals and their behavior and what they represent. So, and we will quickly, I shouldn't say quickly because I can't predict where this shit goes, but we will get into Conor's mind games, as we like to call them. Dana calls them mental warfare. There's a lot of different ways we describe this, but we'll also talk about what it is to grow up the type of man that Khabib Nurmagomedov is. It's a very unique man from a very unique upbringing, and that's real. But I'm using our own perspectives as a doorway to it, so hopefully you don't mind humoring me on this. Why would another, where 200,000 or 300,000 people would pay to get this, and then, the friends that watch it with them and the people who stream it illegally, and that makes 1 million or a couple million, and in this case it could be 10 or 20 million, including all the people in the rooms. Why do they care? Why do we care? Why? Like, what? We say, oh, he captures the imagination of people, or he creates controversy, or, people get emotionally attached, or it attracts the casual viewer, however you want to say it. For some reason, individual human beings are drawn to this. And I say that way because everyone's someone, just like you, or me, or Mark, or anybody. They're just people. These are people. And when we talk about, large groups of people as conservatives or Republicans or hardcore or casual or fight fans or video game fans, or when we do any of that stuff, sometimes what we're doing is undermining that these are individual humans having individual human experiences. What we can say is that those experiences connect, or they are as wide as they are, that maybe you can group some of them. But why are some people drawn to this, and why are some people so deeply attached to this? Mark, why do you watch some people? What are your first thoughts as to why people respond to this?
Well, I think they're invested to a certain extent. They're invested either as fans or they're invested to see the other person lose.
Okay. That's perfect. That's exactly what I was asking about. Because the next thing is why? Why would anybody be invested? Because emotion, attachment, love,
charisma.
And charisma goes both ways. Charisma can inspire and motivate and create love and attachment. It can also create hate and jealousy and anger and bitterness and just that. No way. We don't want that. We don't like that, for many reasons. But you create this. This is created. And yes, I don't know that anybody would argue this statement I'm going to make. It is certainly no disrespect. If you know me, you know how much I love Eddie Alvarez. You know how much I admire Khabib Nurmagomedov. You know how much of a fan of Dustin Poirier I am. You know how much respect I have for Jose Aldo. But these people without Conor do not create this. I don't think anybody would argue that. Do you? No, I don't think anybody would argue. I think simple math would say that a Dustin Poirier or a Khabib fight has this many people interested, and then you add Conor and it's this many people. And sometimes instead of first you might deny that to be true, but then it's difficult to do when you just use the math and the evidence. So then next, some people would try to somehow diminish this statement by saying, marketing this, or, the marketing machine or whatever. Nobody has ever spent money marketing something that does not gain you value by marketing it. And I've seen that. I think I had this conversation ever so briefly with Joe Rogan on his JRE when he was so kind to invite me. It's a real pleasure when you get to go and hang out with Joe. It really is. But we were talking about Amanda Nunes and Ronda Rousey, and how when Ronda, there was nobody who thought, none of the people who were spending money promoting Ronda imagined that Amanda would lose. And this, again, is no disrespect to Amanda Nunes, somebody I admire greatly. But if you spend, we'll just pull up some money, $10 million to promote Ronda Rousey, and you put $10 million to promote Amanda Nunes, you will not get the same amount of viewership for your money. Mark, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, I don't think anybody with any sort of experience or real gives any consideration to this would disagree that if we took $50 million and invested it in trying to get people attached to Chad Mendes, who I admire. Again, this is not I hope this wouldn't come off disrespectful. This is just simple, non-emotional analysis. And then $50 million or whatever I just said with Conor McGregor, I think that for some reason you will get a bigger return. You will have more people buy the thing, or more people. Well, this is all market driven and this is all finance driven, but more people will buy the Conor McGregor pay-per-view or shirt or.
It's the same reason why Reebok dumped money into Paige Van Zandt, Sage Northcutt right off the bat before they.
So people are like, why can't you put the marketing machine into my fighter X? Why are you putting it into Sage Northcutt? It's not because they randomly selected this kid. It's because they know that $50 million in Sage Northcutt and $50 million in Mark Manaharan will pay off more for Sage Northcutt. And so what is this thing? So you may disagree for whatever reason. If you do, I'm sorry. I haven't done my job to get this across well enough, and that's on me. It's not on you. But if you do agree, then we have to say, what is that thing? And that thing is very, very, very hard to describe. And I've tried to study it, and I've tried to study people who've studied it, and I've tried to look at it. But it has something to do with creating that attachment or hatred of an individual. And, the ones earlier in this phase, and Elvis and the Beatles are some of the earliest in this, although of our modern age, King Tutankhamun, was an earlier one, or who was that beautiful princess in Egypt with who were the
Cleopatra.
Cleopatra. I mean, this has existed a long fucking time before the Beatles came along. But in our modern example, we are looking at and we're always looking for some bite-sized ways to describe it. Cult of personality, superstar, whatever we want to call it. But it's something. It's a thing. And to me, sorry I'm taking the long route, but this is what I do. And I thank you for taking it with me, those that do. For me, this thing is connected to the ability to make Eddie Alvarez not perform well in the fight, to make Dustin Poirier say, yeah, I guess he was in my head. Also, Michael Johnson said that Khabib was in his head at one point. Michael Johnson also said later that Poirier was in his head, actually. And Diaz. We're not picking on Michael Johnson. In fact, I think I'm wrong about that, and it was only Diaz that he said that about. I was fishing through my Rolodex of information.
Even Henry Hoof said it in the corner during that fight.
Yeah, that Diaz
was getting in his head.
Yeah. So what is that thing? I think it's connected. I think that it is connected. I think a lot of it is the same thing. What it is the ability to influence. Okay, if we take it down to its nugget, and that is, I took the long way here because if I just said Conor can influence crowds, he influences people, they get that, and, he can also influence Jose Aldo. I don't know if I did as good a job. And if I did, then I apologize for the long route. But that very same thing, that thing that's hard to describe, that thing that the Beatles had, didn't matter that much because the Beatles aren't fighting another band. They influence the audience buys records, the audience scream. When the audience screams, it makes some other people go, the Beatles is bullshit. These guys are ruining society. Elvis was the same thing. I'm sure Cleopatra, and I'm sure Tutankhamun, who, if you look at the history of what happened with Tutankhamun and you look at Justin Bieber, you will be shocked by how similar they are in different eras. But that's way outside the point. But the ability to influence us, to love and or hate McGregor, to admire him, to despise him, all of these things, to deeply connect to the people who fight him in different ways than we have. And don't trust me, people have always they've loved Khabib for a long time. Before Conor McGregor came along, And I say this to people a lot as we're talking about this. If you pull up Khabib according to any modern metric, like say Instagram is a very modern metric, Khabib has 5.8 million followers. Now, could have been 4.1 or 3.9 before Conor, but it was a shitload. And trust me when I tell you, these are the modern metrics. It doesn't matter Q rating and internet searches and ratings on the Tonight Show. That Khabib's post, any Khabib post, here's him training with a guy, that got 455,000, I was going to say views, but likes. That means people watched it and made an action. That is a shitload more than anybody who watches the Tonight Show. So do not misunderstand me. Khabib Nurmagomedov, in and of his own right, is quite correctly celebrated by a large, large audience of people. That's real. But right now, all of those people care so much more, man. They just want to see McGruber or McNugget or that motherfucker, whatever they call him. They want to see this guy fucking destroy him. That's influence, right? That's influence. The people who admire him, I mean, shit, didn't you want to try that whiskey? Mark, didn't you want to try that whiskey after you saw that? I mean, I did. And people are asking me on Twitter, you know, what'd you think, like, after you saw that press conference? I thought, God, I want to taste that whiskey. It's influence. Other people are like, I will never drink that whiskey in the world. It's a different kind of influence. He made you hate something inadvertently for his purposes, but you were deeply affected by it. And I believe there is a connection. Imagine if you can influence 1 million people, what if you focus that ability to influence on one guy? Jose Aldo or Eddie Alvarez. Doesn't that feel like something to you? You know? And trust me, I'm a science guy. I like to one, start with truth. And then I'll go and I'll meander into what happens when the Polynesian navigators were trying to figure out, et cetera, et cetera. And that's what I'm doing here. And I'm sure that there is some science to this that I can look up. And I have been reading a number of interesting things about what it is to focus and what it is to be present in moments. These are real. Amy Cuddy has a book called Presence right now. I've listened to it or read it twice now, trying to get a sense for the truth of what that connection is to the moment, what that connection is to us. I mean, if you hate Conor McGregor, you cannot deny that you hate Conor McGregor. In fact, your actions in finding a way to tell somebody you don't know in another country on Twitter how much you hate him is inherent evidence of his influence on you, you know? And it doesn't have to be a compliment to him. You don't have to. You don't have to begrudgingly admit that he influenced you. It's okay. If his influence was to make you want to see him die in a cage by your Khabib's hand, that's okay. It doesn't make him great. In fact, according to you, it makes him one of the most terrible people that's ever lived. You just can't stand him. That's influence. And why does this matter, right? Why on earth would this matter? All that matters is punches and kicks, right? Not only, and this is something I often try to do, and some people appreciate it, some people just don't. But I'm trying to make sense of the world around us by using this beautiful art form. And whether you're talking about how and why somebody gets elected into office, how and why somebody, influence right now is more powerful than, and it's an extension of fame, but it's a much more powerful thing than fame. It's much more powerful than money. It's much more powerful than political power, unless it's political influence. But influence is everything. Influence is everywhere we are. How and why I bought this thing, I was influenced. Why you're listening to this podcast at all, somewhere along the line you were influenced by it. Why I'm drinking this particular flavor, whether I know it or not, I'm influenced. This Circus cup, my wife bought because she liked it, because of the influence of the design this is our whole life. We're being influenced. And understanding it gives us some power. At least realizing it's real gives us some power. But not only that, as we apply it back to the fight. And now we go into a single press conference that we saw. And before I go into what we saw and what the power or lack of power of it, let me preface it with this. It doesn't have to matter in any way on fight night. There is no guarantee that it will or guarantee that it won't. There is no factual matter of how the effect of somebody making you mad or not mad or you being cold or none of those things by any means have to affect you on fight night. Okay? And that's just a fact. But influence is important. So I'm going to start with my one example, my one piece of information before we go deeper into the press conference and then deeper into the mentality of Conor McGregor and Khabib Nurmagomedov, two men that I admire greatly, both of them. And when people ask me who's going to win, if you know me now, my answer is I have no idea, but I may have more idea as I gather information leading up to the fight. And then they say, who would you like to win? And currently, that's a really hard one when you admire two great, brilliant athletes and artists in this brilliant moment in time. It's a very hard one. But let's take simply this. Ali Abdelaziz.
Ali Abdelaziz.
Ali Abdelaziz. I'm sorry, my apologies. As if you saw me earlier on Periscope, you'll know that when I get somebody's name wrong, it's deeply not disrespect. I have an issue with names that I connect to partying too much when I played in a band, followed by getting hit in the head too much. Somehow it's names. I talked about it on many podcasts, and so please accept my apology, Ali. But Ali was potentially, again, and Ali is somebody I've gotten to know over the last while, and you'll hear all types of controversial things about Ali, but the people who work with him, they love him. They love him. Frankie Edgar. Cody Garbrandt. These are some of the greatest athletes that I admire greatly. They love this man. That means something. That means something to me. So this is not in any way, I'm not piling on nothing. I'm simply offering this idea. Conor and Ali get into it for a moment there. Does that matter? Everything matters. Everything matters. Or it doesn't. When I say that, you could dismiss it, but it matters in the sense that if Ali is wound up, or anybody else, this is not pointed at Ali, he's somebody I've got to know and I appreciate greatly. And in fact, he has recommended me for an important commentary job in the past. And I appreciate him. But if Conor got Ali upset, Ali and I, who are now friends, we got mad at each other one time. And we're two very passionate, emotional guys. And we called each other names and threatened each other. He threatened me more because he's actually a much higher-level martial artist with more influence on more dangerous people than me. But nonetheless, we're good. But so he can be emotional as we all can, as I can. If Conor McGregor was able to get that man emotional in that moment, and let's say he was only emotional for 7 minutes, what that may mean is for 7 minutes, Ali's emotion could affect another coach, or could affect Khabib, or could affect the handler or the driver, or could affect what they're going to do at dinner, or could affect they cancel a training session, could make somebody else wound up. We all affect each other. Again, this is a life lesson for me, and then I've said this before, but if you walk out of your house right now, and you just go out and you have a good perspective in the world, and you see and you get in an Uber and you say, man, how was your day? You doing good? And you ask them some questions and you share something with them. That guy will be different when the next person gets in his Uber. He will. This is what influence is. And he will be kind to him or her. And they may go and open a door for some. This spreads, right? You know this. You know this inherently, that what you put out into the world can spread. Happy, mad, scared, angry, appreciative. You know it. You know it without a shadow of a doubt. You've experienced it every day. So upsetting even a single member of that team has the potential. Doesn't mean it did. In fact, I suspect that Ali, with so much love and appreciation for his guys and their love for him, they just helped each other sort through it and it was nothing. But these are the little things that people are trying to accomplish in settings like this. Only experts, because no offense to our guy, Colby Covington, but he's not going to really do that. Has not yet developed. If he may at some point, but he has not yet developed the expertise to actually, do that. Incidentally, while we're using the metric of followers as a tool, Colby Covington, and no, Colby, don't come after me. I didn't. 118,000 human beings. This guy has photos of himself with President Trump, and only 118,000 people are like, "That's my guy." Never mind, that's my guy. Just wonder what he's up to. It's not a lot compared to 5 point whatever million people that Khabib has, and who knows how many people follow Conor, even just to hate him, some of them. Influence. It's real, right? So when you look at that, the goal, when someone is able to influence you to love him or hate him, and you don't know him, he's never spoken directly to you. He has spoken directly to me. And I've told this story before. It fucking shook me the day that he told me to my face how exactly he was going to knock out Jose Aldo. There's video of it. It's on pinned to my Twitter right now. It fucking freaked me out. I felt something. I was like, what the fuck is this? You see that guy walk into a place, and I've known others like him. Not to that extent. Not to that completely mastered, present influencing those around them extent, but that's real. To deny that's real is to put yourself in jeopardy. And that's what my guy Eddie did. There's a lot of footage of Eddie going, that's not real, man. It ain't real. Santa Claus isn't real. Fucking was real on fight night because it's the same thing. It is the influencing of other people. And that's when I write down, we're going to talk about Conor versus Khabib, the mental aspect. We could say he said this and it maybe made him think that, or is he in his head, or what's the mental, but what is it? What's at the root of it? It's fucking influence, right? The most powerful thing in the world right now, influence. And it's somebody who has, if you can open it up and use it there was some insane amount of people watching on YouTube when they were 25 minutes late. Whatever that number was. I forget what it was. It was hundreds of thousands. I'm looking at it like, all these people are just sitting around waiting for this?
And not even that. Beyond that, if you look at the live chat, off the live stream, just the comments, the way that the new comments just keep on popping up.
The intensity of reaction.
Are engaged and that committed.
Yeah, it's wild. It's influence. And that influence is wide. You're in it. You've been influenced. We're all influenced, right? It's wild. It's wild. When we started talking about selling pay-per-views, we started talking about people who don't call themselves fight fans buying it. We talked about 8 or 10 million people, probably more. If there's 2 million sold and it's three people on an average household, and it's probably 4 as the average, then you add people in bars and they'll sell out probably arenas in Ireland where people just be in there to be together. Then the venue, what do we get? Theaters, 15 million, 20 million, all pausing to see this. That's not very something special. Doesn't mean I'm not taking a side. I'm not a nut hugger. Not yet. If I'm gonna nut hug, it'll be next week. Once I've taken it in and seen what I believe is happening, right or wrong. Just a person focusing my knowledge and experience as best I can. But I'm just saying that's real. That's undeniable. And if it's not a big jump to say, if you have the ability to influence wide, and let's say, 15 million watch it. Well, however many million want to know who won and didn't watch it, but are asking about it and talking about it. And do you know how many fucking people, when I have said anything about him, and I have the same story from Chael, and I've got the same story from Joe, and I've got the same story from everybody. The reaction of people, even to fringe characters like me. It's wild, man. It's fucking wild. It's wild. So that ability to influence that widely, what if you just fucking focus it? Are you ready to tell me that's not what's going on? Are you ready to tell me that that's not what Poirier experienced, that's not what Aldo experienced, and that's not what Eddie Alvarez experienced? You know, the one I would just fucking love this. I don't know if it'll ever happen. Not ruling it out. We've grown a lot, and a lot of people seem to appreciate our work. I'd like to sit down with Nate Diaz with an honest talk. And many of these guys it's a gift to even be able to say this out loud. Many of them have given me different conversations than they give usually. You might see it if you watch the chat with BJ Penn, definitely chat with Eddie Alvarez, Jorge, day after he fought.
Even Cormier.
They give me something different. It's a great joy in my life and a great source of pride. So I know at least what some have told me is whether I fought or how I've dedicated myself to the way I study martial arts, whatever it is. I'm not here to not how to hug myself. Is that a thing? But they have. And if I could sit down with Nate in such an environment where he was like, I trust this guy. He's just one of us doing his best. Couldn't fight like us, but he wants to live like us. And ask him, these aren't black and white and cut and dried things. It didn't work at 100% versus Eddie and 0% versus Nate. Dustin Poirier, it might have been, hey, it was weirder than I've experienced, but I was still there. I wasn't completely in there. And Nate, I'd like him to, if he would be willing or able, I'd like him to go, fuck yeah, he threw me a bit. Or there were moments. Or it was weird in there at times. Or I had questions. Or I wasn't sure. Or it was a very, because he's like, the guy kind of hit hard. It wasn't that great. And these are important things to discuss at the stage of his career. And for purposes other than, his job isn't to tell us the truth. His job is to use discussion for the purposes of his war and his growth and his accomplishment, and I respect that. But if he just was like, yeah, man, that guy fucking got to me, when I'm normally, people can get to me at a 1 or a 2 out of 10, that guy got to me at a 4.5. But fuck him, I put it down. That's what I'd like to know, is, because it ain't, and this, I guess, is what I'm looking for, is to get across, is people like, is he in his head? Who's in whose head? This isn't a yes or no. It's not a binary. It's not a 1 or a 0. It's not a, yeah, you're fucked, or there's nothing happening here. Although there are times, it's a scale. It's a spectrum, right? I mean, I feel like this conversation is natural. It's rooted in my adult lifetime of experience caring about this stuff. It's rooted in conversations I've had. It's rooted in my experiences. It's rooted in things that the Eddie Alvarez's of the world have given me, or the Jorge Masvidal's have given me. It's rooted in me being in the gym and watching these rounds with a different eye, with the ability to draw more from the moments that's what I'm trying to pass on to you. I'm hoping that you don't just say, well, I disagree, that you actually pause and go, well, it's possible that somebody with, thousands or tens of thousands or, whatever, hours of something could extract more from seeing the same thing as me. And the reason I bring that up is I was looking at something online and somebody was saying, well, we're looking at the same thing, but I disagree. It's like, I get it, and that's totally fair. But isn't it possible that somebody with expertise could extract more information, valuable information, not right or wrong, not more right, just more information from that? And that's what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to give to you or offer to you the idea that this is all just, at its root, it's a type of influence. And whether or not, and there are many ingredients to it, many ingredients to it. The verbal, the content of the verbal, the tone, the nonverbal, physical actions. But for this one, and, again, I'm not trying to measure this or say who wins it or lost it. I'm simply looking at it. One thing I think we can agree on is McGregor tried to make serious attempts to undermine Khabib. There are two jobs that he's trying to do at those press conferences. One is sell the fight to make money and get people engaged and have them responding and buzzing, and he does that every time. And the second one is an attempt to create some type of doubt or emotion in you that will be of some value to him. And in this case, his attempts to do it, and I talked about this at the airport. I took that clip down because the sound wasn't very good. And although I felt it was still of value to share even with bad sound, I took this clip down. But I was looking at it, and the most important thing, whether it worked or not, I'm not making a value judgment on that. I'm trying to offer you the ways to look at it, or ways to discuss it, or ways to consider it, not tell you what happened. This guy did this, and this guy won that. I don't think that's of any value to you, and that you can get that anywhere. Somebody will tell you who is going to win the fight, or somebody will tell you who's better at this or better at that. All of these are opinions. I don't want to give you opinions anymore. Who cares about my opinion? I want to offer you something that maybe you can find something different. But in this case, analytically speaking, whether it worked or didn't, where McGregor went was to the places that are off limits. And I use that in quotations. They're off limits. They are unsportsmanlike, or they are, unreasonable, or what are some other words that we can use to describe, that people use to say when you go overboard, out of bounds, all of the McGregor used things, went to places that we don't go.
Cross the line.
Cross the line. That's a good one. I think that's the one I was looking for. Cross the line. Well, let's wander out into the forest and just fucking show me the line. Doesn't exist. Let's wander out in the forest and find a bucket of sportsmanship. Doesn't exist. These are human constructs. We just came up with them. And what was sport, because I commentate bare knuckle boxing. If you're listening on podcast, I'm holding my hands up in that old school boxing way right now. What is considered unsportsmanship or non-sporting or across the line in that world is very different from boxing, which is very different from Olympic judo, which is very different. These are all human constructs. They're agreements, unwritten, in most cases, unspoken agreements that we make. And I'll tell you, on the other side of the line, over the limit, cross the line, that's where all the good shit is. Because the things on the side of the line, the things on this side of what is sportsmanship, we've all experienced. It doesn't bother us anymore. If somebody, says your mother's, what do people say about someone's mother? They're like overweight.
Yeah, your mom's fat.
Whatever. Yeah, Mark, your mom's fat. I mean, that you can tell that's ridiculous. Your mom is not fat, and even if she were, who cares what I think? Pointless. You're a dick. You can't fight. Like, to keep it on the side of what we've sort of unspoken agreed upon may not be okay, it doesn't get you anywhere. You don't have any impact with that. Now, there's many reasons you could choose to not go there. And in my small and ultra-limited competitive career, I never went to any of those places because I cherished the purity of the contest. That was just my feeling. But when I played in a rock band, for the purposes of making, getting attention, I said shit about other bands that had never been said, especially not in Canada. And I'll tell you also, it wasn't easy for anybody. And I'm since apologized as an adult that I went to those places for the purposes of creating this. And this is in the early 2000s.
SoCan's a small industry.
Yeah. Canadian music is a very small industry. But it propelled us. It had value for me. But it was hard. Other people could dismiss it sometimes, and not all did. Some were like, fuck you, Robin Black. Why'd you say that about my band on television? I said it because it would be seen many times. It would be repeated over and over and used at the year end. Look how funny it was. Robin Black was wearing makeup and he said this about a band from Vancouver. Or Matthew Good, who's a brilliant musician. or Nickelback. Although Nickelback was pretty low-hanging fruit. And ultimately, why did people hate Nickelback? Because they're fucking huge.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because they're massive and they're successful. And there's an element of that to why some people hate McGregor. Not all of them. There's lots of reasons they hate McGregor. But there's a Nickelback element to Conor McGregor as well, you know? And but it was hard. Nickelback didn't give a shit. They had $100 million. But it was hard because people would say shit back to me. You pay a price for that. But once you get to a point where McGregor is, the ultra-powerful, they don't pay the kind of prices we do. If I said something now, and at that time, I had been a martial artist with some confidence, and most people who played in bands were pretty, a lot of pussies kicking around in bands. So I wasn't concerned they'd smash my face in, but I at least had to be aware that was a possibility. McGregor doesn't have to concern himself with that. There's going to be security. There's going to be contracts signed. There's going to be things, although... And somebody responded to this to me with this on Twitter before I took down that clip with the ruined sound, which I guess they could hear well enough. Many people could, but many couldn't. They said, even at the highest level, when you cross some of these lines, you can get assassinated. You can get shot. You can have somebody attack your family. And these things are true. These are the things you're playing with. When you go to those places, the dark places, as to quote a George St. Pierre thing, not that George goes to, George is not a dark place kind of guy, although everybody in their own mind has their challenges. But when you start talking about somebody's father, proud man's father, you start talking about their allegiance to their country, their allegiance to their people, you start using McGregor. Literally, and people corrected me on this quite enthusiastically. I said, Muslims don't believe in Jesus. They do, that he was a prophet. What I meant was they don't believe that he is the Lord and Savior above, which McGregor, you will notice, was raised a Catholic, but is an atheist. And I think we know that. Once you get into, I have no problem with the gods. Gods recognize gods, and I accept all the gods. And these are concepts of a modern, plus the way he views self, and there's a lot of evidence that this man is an atheist. But even if you don't subscribe to that, he has never talked about Jesus Christ above being the key to his fights. He believes hard work is. These are his messages that he sends. Hard work, drive, commitment to success, self-improvement. It's humanist. He comes off as a humanist, someone who believes that it is at the root of who you are that you control those things. And in this one, with a man who is a committed and true Muslim, he's talking about Jesus Christ above. He's bringing alcohol. He knows full well this man doesn't drink alcohol. He's bringing that. Do you know what I mean? These are boundaries.
Mispronouncing Assalamu alaikum.
Yeah, he's purposefully mispronouncing. Yeah, it. He is. Then he's taking things that have so many generations of conflict through different parts of the history of this powerful country that somebody's proud to be a part of. And he's going there. This is all art of war shit. You can get it. Sun Tzu, what am I, again?
Sun Tzu.
Sun Tzu, sorry. It's been a name day for me. Fuck. It's fatigue, too. I'm pushing it pretty hard. Sun Tzu, this is art of war. Pick up art of war. Actually, maybe if all you get out of these conversations is pick that book up and read it, even the point form, concepts of it, it's all very applicable, because whether you ever are going to be in a war or it'll be a nature of how you're trying to sell your app and somebody else is trying to take your audience, these are applicable rules to life. So this is the game. So you see it on a wide range. Making some hate him, some love him. 10 million will view it, maybe more. If 2 million buy it, you know more than 10 million are watching it. Plus, I believe you don't even pay per view in Russia or Brazil or England, right? Yeah. So 2 million bought, and 4 million there, and then 4 million. 4 people on each is 8. That's 12 million bars. I mean, maybe it's 20 million. I don't fucking know. But there's the wide. Then there's the focused, studied, researched, strategized, planned, trying to play that game. And then on the night, there's the physical, there's the nonverbal, there is your own mind, the presence, what you're capable of getting from yourself. An attempt. This is all the shit. And if you're looking for me to tell you whether or not McGregor, how much he affected Khabib, I don't know. Neither do you. I'll tell you this much. If you look up the word heuristic, we often try, as a human behavior, we try to take something, and if we can't, if it's a very complicated question, what we do is we apply a heuristic. Complicated question is, did Conor McGregor's, games of influence and strategies and art of war applied concepts, how much did it affect Khabib? You know why that's a complex question? Because nobody fucking knows the answer to that. You get the greatest body language expert, and you bring him in with the greatest, history of mental warfare expert, and I'll come in with them with whatever experience I have. We'll bring in a psychologist, and we'll bring in somebody who is a historian of Dagestani and Chechen politics, and we'll bring all those people in. You'll sit them down, and they'll tell you, I don't know how much it fucking affected them. So we don't know. But we apply a heuristic. The question, how much did he affect them? Complex question. The heuristic is a replacement with an easy question. And the easy question we'll take in all these things is, who do you like more? And if you like Conor, you say, fucking got up in his head. And if you like Khabib, you say he didn't affect him. Look. And you'll even use the same evidence through it. You'll take a shot of Khabib, I'm prepared for this. It doesn't bother me. And if you're Conor's guy, you'll take that one moment where it's like, what are you talking about? And you'll use those as the only moments, and your heuristic will be, who am I cheering for? Yeah, and you'll use that to replace
confirmation bias. We see what we want to see.
We see what we want to see. And you apply a heuristic. The same people will say, who do you think, based on all of the information of skills, experience, the ability to perform on the night, outside things you don't know, diet, exercise, health, injuries, all of this you don't know, who do you think will win the fight? Your only true answer is, if you have any knowledge, is, I have no idea. But the heuristic is, who are you cheering for? And when people say, who's your pick, they're using the heuristic. Who are you cheering for? And then you say who you're cheering for, and then you take whatever bits of information would support that. And that's what you do. And a lot of that is driven by the influence of that guy and Khabib. And, if you are hoping that Eddie Alvarez fights the winner, or you're hoping somebody, and Dana, and fucking Chael, and Joe Rogan, and whatever. And Brendan, these are all the things. They all influence you, and then you make a pick based on who you'd like to win, and then you support it with the evidence you have. And you've been affected. You've been influenced, and that's. I apologize if I can't tell you, but I'm being honest with you. And I don't think other people are lying to you when they tell you 100% Conor got in his head, or no way he didn't. I don't think they're lying to you. I think they're giving you the best answer they can. It's made up. It's an opinion. It's an opinion with very limited information. So that will wrap up the deep dive into, at least, and maybe it's not a deep dive. In fact, maybe it's a surface dip into it. And it's a dip. Took a little dip into what's going on there. And I hope you found it interesting.